Hello, dear students. I'm glad to meet you at our course again. Today we're going to continue to talk about the most popular house styles. Let's start. Influences from the Italian Renaissance can be seen in small geometric details and in the stucco exteriors and wrought iron windows and balconies. The typical U-shaped Mediterranean floor plan is often used because it is easily navigable and it flows easily throughout the house. These homes also have a very lively color palette and patterned tiles are often used. Stucco walls keep the home cool, as does the signature red terra ornate decorative finish, while the exterior has clear influences from Spanish Revival architecture. Mediterranean and Spanish architecture both have a low-pitched tile roof, cotta roof, and the homes are often laid out in a way that maximizes airflow. Rooms open to the courtyard, promoting cooling cross-ventilation and the flow of fresh air. Modern and contemporary styles tend to get confused. Modern architecture refers to design inspired by the historical art movement of modernism. Most classic examples of modern architecture are more than 50 years old, which makes it a little easier to tell a modern style home from a contemporary style home. Open living spaces, clean geometric lines, and function over form are key elements of the style. The first half of the 20th century marked the birth of modern architecture. After the Second World War, experimentation with construction technology was prevalent. Glass, steel, and concrete were not confined to a home structure anymore. Architects started using these materials for design. Modern architecture was a rejection of the traditional neoclassical architecture that had been popular throughout the 19th century. Modernism came about during industrialization as an effort to make architecture more functional while maintaining its simplicity. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe is one of the famous architects who developed modern architecture. Rohe was the first architect to design the open office concept. This inspired many residential architects to design homes without partitions or detached rooms. A modern home has an open floor plan and values function over form. Contemporary architecture isn't an architectural movement. This means that contemporary architecture can offer a multitude of architectural choices, provided that they stand out from what is normally done. However, the high level of variety doesn't stop some common traits from being observable within contemporary architecture. Contemporary architecture tends to distance itself from the straight line by opting more often for curved lines instead. In some cases, a building is entirely designed around curved lines. In other cases, both curved and straight lines are used in the same building. In contemporary architecture, one sees buildings with rounded shapes. It also allows for the creation of interior living spaces with unusual layouts. Another feature of contemporary architecture today is the use of new materials for both the interior and the exterior. Traditional materials like glass, wood, brick, and metals are preferred. Plants also have their place within contemporary architecture, particularly on roofs, but also increasingly on the walls. Larger and more plentiful windows are also a characteristic of contemporary architecture. Multiple openings and their uncommon positioning, panoramic windows, window walls, and skylights have all entered the playing field. One of the consequences of this kind of fenestration is that it makes full use of the sunlight, first of all as natural lighting, and secondly to take advantage of passive solar heating. In contemporary architecture, eco-housing elements are required. The use of photovoltaic cells, geothermal heating, heat pumps, heat exchangers, and thermal collectors is considered. with the goal of producing heat in new ways and conserving it. In the field of residential construction, for example, the aim is to integrate the home perfectly into its natural surroundings. The purpose is not only to protect the surroundings from the disturbance, but to turn them into one of the architectural elements that gives the home its own special character. Apartment house, also called apartment block or block of flats, building containing more than one dwelling unit, most of which are designed for domestic use, but sometimes including shops and other non-residential features. The origins of apartment living can be traced back to Roman times. In the great cities of the Roman Empire, urban congestion necessitated communal living and the individual houses were reserved for the very wealthy. An insular Latin island was a kind of apartment building where the street level characteristically aroused artisans, workshops, and commercial establishments with living spaces upstairs. Insula could be up to 6 or 7 stories high, and because of safety issues and the extra flights of stairs, the highest apartments were the cheapest to rent. Insulae were constructed of brick covered with concrete. A more lax version of the apartment first appeared in Paris and other large European cities during the 18th century. In the typical Parisian apartment building in the 18th century, the size and financial means of the tenants decreased with each successive story. These apartment buildings typically featured mansard roofs and garret rooms. When wealthy Americans came to Paris for their cultural education, their interest was caught by these Parisian flats. In New York, nothing like that existed. A large, well-appointed space in a building that happened to be shared with other families. Tenements didn't have parlors. Two New York architects in particular, Calvert Vaux, who helped design Central Park, and Richard Mumms Hunt, liked what they saw. In the late 1860s, the city's first middle-class apartment building was built and boasted private toilets. Many of the tenements built in the 19th century are still standing in Scotland and have in recent years become highly valuable and sought after due to their large rooms, high ceilings, and ornamental features. Dating back to the Middle Ages, the buildings we now recognize as tenements in Edinburgh were built by the burghers. These wealthy folks decided to build up rather than out so they could stay within the safety of the city walls. In Glasgow, tenements arrived in the 19th and early 20th century to house the growing workforce during the Industrial Revolution. Thank you for your attention, dear students. We have finished to study module which is called Introduction to Construction Industry, and next time we are going to start the new one which is called Traditional Building Materials. See you next time. Goodbye.